Hey, happy Friday. Welcome back to another Friday Tech Workshop. I'm Joseph, a senior developer advocate with Appsmith, and in today's workshop, we're going to build a Slack Messenger app to send data from any API or database to any Slack channel and tag any user. So in this case, I'm going to be using lead data similar to leads from Salesforce, and then select one of those, pick a channel, and then select the users that we want to tag in the message and be able to just send that new record to Slack, automatically tagging people with just a click of a button. First, we're going to head over to Slack and create a new app, generate a token, and add the proper scopes. And then we'll save that token as a authenticated API data source in Appsmith so that we can add the APIs to list channels and users and create a message. But first, we'll do a quick walkthrough of the finished app so you can see what we're about to build, and then we'll head over to Slack to create that token. All right, let's check it out. Okay, so first we'll do a quick demo of what we're going to build. This pretty simple app. It just has 4 different APIs. I've got one for listing some leads. It's just some mock data. And so if I select a row here, you can see which lead you're about to send to Slack. And then you can search for the users. So the other APIs I have is to list all the users from a Slack workspace. I can list all the channels so that you can select a channel to send it to. And then I've got an API to actually send a message to that channel. So 3 APIs here we'll be adding for Slack, and then just the mock data. So I've got a row selected here. Let me search for myself in here, and that will send the message to tag me in it. And then I'll select a channel. I've got one set up here for DevRel. So I'm going to send a message to this channel, tagging myself with this user. And I've got the channel open here. You can see a few that already came in. So we'll go ahead and test this out. And it looks like that ran. And here we go. We have a new lead. It's saying the name of the user and then actually tagging me, mentioning me so that I get a notification. So that's important when you want to actually have somebody respond quickly in Slack. If you just send their name or their email or whatever, they're not actually going to get a notification. So this lets you connect any API, any database as this top source here. And then you can tag a user, you could make it select multiple if you want. I'm keeping it pretty simple to where I can just click a button and I don't even have to type a message. But if you wanted to, you could adjust this and have an input box here for a custom message as well. So it's pretty flexible. But today what we're going to do is just start out with this mock data set and then build the rest of it with Slack using their API. So I'm going to copy this mock data set here. I've got a query this API to get some data from Makun. And I'm just going to start out with a new blank page and copy this API over there, and then we'll focus on the Slack API for the rest of this. So starting a new page, and we'll go back and grab that API and copy that to our page 3 here. Okay, and then I want to display this on a table. So we can bind this to a table widget here. And this is our new leads. Just going to make this a little smaller so we can see more of them and add a title here. Okay, so everything else that we're going to do is with the Slack API, just so we can focus on that. I'm just using a mock data set here to let us jump in and then focus on Slack. So start out by going to the Your Apps section from your Slack API login here. And I'm going to create a new app. Then you want to choose from scratch and give it a name. And then select which workspace you want to use this particular token or app with. It will only be able to access that one. So you can use the same approach on multiple workspaces, but you'll need a different token for each one. Okay, so we're going to create this app. And then here on the next screen, you'll get a client ID and secret, but we're not actually going to use those. we want to go to the OAuth section here. And this is where we can install this app to a particular workspace. And then you also want to add scopes. Now you can either add bot token scopes or user scopes. If you do the user scopes, everything gets posted as you, which means you don't get notified. I like using the bot token, one, so that everybody knows it was posted by a bot and not actually you, but then two, so that if you're following that channel, you'll actually get a notification that somebody besides you has posted. So it just helps you keep an eye on stuff. However, you have to invite the bot to the channel before it can interact there. A person can join a channel, but the bot can't join it on its own. Somebody's got to add it. So just little things to keep in mind. But today we're going to use the bot token, which means we have to invite the user. So I'm going to add some scopes that will allow us to create a message, to list all the channels and list all the users. So pretty much everything for some reason has a different name in the scopes than it does kind of in the Slack interface. What you call a message is a chat. So we want to be able to write chats. Okay, and then we want to list channels. So that's the channels read. And we're also going to need a list of the users. And same with users. There it is, users read. And I think that's it. We might need to come back and add some more scopes. But if you do this first, if you add your scopes before you create the token, then it should work the first time. If you come back and change the scopes, you have to reinstall the app. So at least do it the first time. You'll want to add the scopes. And then if you do need to come back and change them, you're just going to go through this process again to install it to a particular workspace. So we've created the app, added scopes. Now I'm going to install it, choose the workspace. It's already selected because it's inside of this workspace, but to install it, you just get this consent screen showing you what permissions it's asking for. So I'm going to allow that. And now I have a token. So at first I just had a Slack app, but no bot token. You have to go through that at least once to say what scopes you're approving. Now, if I come and add a new scope, I'll have to come back up here and reinstall it. So I'm going to copy this bot token, and we want to create a new API using this token so that we can, first we'll start with listing channels. So I'm heading over to my app, and we'll add a new data source. Going to add a new authenticated API. And this is going to go in the bearer token. So you use the authentication type bearer token and then paste that token value here. Notice this green lock icon. So this field's going to get encrypted when it saves it at the data source. And now we need the API URL. So if you go to the API docs, there's a bunch of examples here for each method. We just need this root part of the URL. That's the same for every endpoint. I'm going to get the /2 just so we don't have to type that every time. Okay. All right, so I've got the root URL. We're saying this uses bearer token authentication. Here's the token for the bot. So I'm going to go ahead and save this and then add a new API. Now, if you're already selected on the data source, this creates the API connected to that data source. But if you go adding it from over here, then you have to select and make sure you're adding it under that data source so it gets the authentication headers. So we want to list the conversations. It's called channels when you're using Slack and looking at the app, but in the API, it's called conversations. And we want to list them. So let's see if this first API to get channels is working. Okay, we got a 200 response and it says, okay, true. You'll notice with the Slack API that sometimes you'll get a 200 response, but it says okay is false because you've got good authentication and a good URL, but you might be missing some value that's required. And so it will give you a 200 and then say false here and some extra details about you're missing this value or you need this scope or whatever. So just something to keep an eye on to see if you need to go back and add a new scope. Okay, so we have a list of channels. I want to display these in a table widget. Let's go back to the UI and we'll drag in a table here. Actually, I want to do a tab. I'm going to do this slightly different than the demo I showed you earlier so that we can see a full list of the users and the channels. And then I'm going to put a table in here. So we'll do one for the channels. And there we go, get channels. Then here, we'll do this one for the list of users. Now, I'm just going to copy my get channels API. And we'll call this one get users. So that's the users endpoint. And I think that is it. Let's test this out. Okay, true. And now we're looking at members instead of channels. So the other API still had the same structure of an object that has a OK property of true or false, and then an array of some kind. In this second one here, it's members. Over here, we had channels. So now we can display that list of users. We'll add another table widget here. And I think when you're selecting the users, that's where we're going to send the actual message. So I'm going to leave some room for that here. We'll connect the get users query. Okay, so I can select a lead and a user. And then over here, we had a list of like a drop down to select a channel and a button to send it. So let's get all that kind of mocked up. All right, and then I'm going to add an icon here. And just change the label. Okay, now here I want to see the two rows that are selected. Before I go connecting this text widget to the selected rows, this is a good time to name these tables. So it's not table 1, table 2, and I'm trying to remember which is which. I like to use a 3-letter prefix, underscore, and then whatever the data type is or what records. So this is leads. Here we have our members. And this one is our channels. And I think I'll go ahead and name these tabs while we're here. So this is for the channels. This is our members. And we'll make the members one default. All right. Now, the selected rows here. We'll get table leads selected row here. And we can display the customer name or contact name rather. So we'll say lead. All right, and then who is it assigned to? So you select one of the members here, and you need their Slack ID to be able to tag the user. So when you're selecting it, you want to see the name, but in order to actually mention them in Slack, you need to know that ID. So we'll show the user the name here, but then actually use the ID in the API. Okay, there's the name, and we'll call this assigned to. Okay, so I've got one showing the new lead, and that's from the selected row of the top table here. And then who is it assigned to? So you can select a row from the bottom table. And then we need what channel we're going to send it to. And for this one, instead of trying to select it from 3 different tables here, in this case, I'm going to use a drop down. So we need a list of the channel name and the channel ID for all of these channels here. And there are some that are archived, so we can filter that. And there we go. So what I'm going to do is write a function to return just an array of that stuff. And we go back to this tab here. Um, you can write it directly in here, and if it gets to be too much JS, then you can move that to a JS object. But just to kind of build it up and start simple, we'll do it right here using the channel data. So we got get channels dot data dot channels. All right, so that's an array of all the data. I just need the ID and the name. You can actually connect it right here by picking the properties instead of mapping over it. So if I say that the label should come from the channel name and then the value is the ID, you can go ahead and clear out this default. So that alone is enough to get all of them. But if you want to filter this to hide all those ones that are archived, then we can do a dot filter each channel where the channel is archived. If that's true, we don't want to filter those. We want to get the ones where it's false. So I'm going to invert it, negate it with the exclamation point there. And so that should give us a drop down with all the ones where is archived is false. And then if you need to do more than this, more JS, I would move that to a new JS object, do the code there, and then reference that function right here. But this is pretty simple. It's just filtering on that one field. As long as you don't need to repeat that code anywhere, it's fine to just keep it right there. So let's give this a label. All right. I think we're pretty much there on the UI. So you can select a lead that is updating down here. Yep, and then selecting the user, and you can search. So if I want to assign this to myself and pick a channel. All right. It looks like the one thing we are missing here is the channel that I wanted to use. Um, is it private? Oh, wait, I know why it's not shown in here. We're only getting part of the list of channels here. So if we run this, that channels array, there should be 100 of them. Let's look on the table here. Yeah, it's found exactly 100, but we have more channels than that. So the default limit for pagination is 100, but you can go up to 1,000. So for get channels here, lists, and limit equals 1,000. That's why I couldn't see those newer channels. Yes, there's way more coming up under test. Okay, so here's the channel I want to send it to. And I can select users. I can type my name. There we go. And then select a lead. Cool. So we're ready to actually send it. We just need that last Slack API now to create a message. We'll go back to the APIs here. I'm going to copy this one more time. And this one, we are making a post to send a message. Okay, and then let's look at the docs here for posting a message. So for this one, it's chat.postMessage. Copy this. And then the body. Okay, so for the body of sending a message to a channel, you got a couple required parameters here. We got the token already. Then we need to know what channel that we're trying to post it to. And then at least one of either attachments, blocks, or text. We're going to go with the simplest version here of text. Um, Blocks gets into a bunch of different formats of how to post things with buttons and different formatting and links and all that kind of stuff. So we're just going to keep it simple using the text version. So I need an object in the body that has a channel property and a text. All right, so we'll have a channel value here, and then text, and some kind of value here. And so this should create a message in whatever channel we put here. That's going to come from our select widget, where the value is channel ID. So let's make sure we got one in there. All right, that's the channel I want to send it to. Make sure I'm tagging myself. Okay. Now back to the API here, and for the text itself. Okay, and then right here, I want to have a message that says we have a new lead coming from that first table, and then who it's assigned to from the user table. So I'm going to use a template literal, and we'll have a few different variables in here. First one is going to come from the lead table, from its selected row, and we'll get the name, contact name. And I'm just going to write new lead in front of this. We'll have a line return, and then assigned to. Okay, and then the person I'm assigning it to, this is going to come from the ID on the user table, not the name. That's member table. Okay, so that's the user's ID. But when you want to tag a user in Slack, it's not just the ID. You have to have angle brackets around it, an @ symbol, and then the ID. So right here, I need that, and then close it with another angle bracket. And so the merged in value on the text is it says assigned to, angle, @ and then the ID. So that should @ mention me. I think we are ready to test this. Let's see. Let's go back to the UI and connect this button. So I want the on click to run that send message. And we should see a new message for Vernon to Joseph to this channel. Let's go back here. You can see I just added the user to make sure they had permission to post as that bot. So let's test it out. And it looks like it ran, no errors. All right, there it is. So it just tagged me and I got a new notification now. So this way you can tag your teammates to make sure they actually see it in Slack instead of just putting their name. And you can tie data from any API or database now. Using the same approach here and any one of the data sources in Appsmith, you could build an app that's pulling data from Postgres or Elasticsearch, Snowflake, whatever it is, Airtable, and just select that row and pull in whatever data points you want. I'm only using the person's name, but if you wanted, you could do a whole report here, show every value from the record. But I think this is enough to get you started using the Slack API, making sure you set up that data source so it's secure with the credentials stored in the data source, not in your app. So I think that's it for this week. I hope this has been helpful. If you have any questions about this one or ideas for future workshops, feel free to drop a comment below. Thanks again for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.